Welcome everybody by today's presentation about the canon we made for the course Applied Economic Analysis 1. The topic of this canon and presentation will be behavioral economics. So, the structure of this presentation is as follows. First, we have an introduction about behavioral economics. Then, we're going to define some key concepts that play a role in behavioral economics. Then we're going to look at the application of behavioral economics and environmental issues. And finally, we will conclude our findings. So, behavioral economics, what is it really about? It is about the understanding economic behavior and its consequences. So, for instance, if consumers are going to buy some good, such as a hot dog, or go to work, or save for retirement, they're going to think about how am I going to decide what to do. And behavioral economics is about understanding whether people make good or bad choices and how you can be helped to make better choices. So, first of all, we're going to define some key concepts. We can see economics as two subparts. We have microeconomics, which looks at the individual's behavior and decision making. We also have macroeconomics, who looks at the economy as a whole. So we have banks, governments, businesses, consumers all together. However, we will focus on microeconomics because that looks at the individual level and the decisions that the individual makes. We have some concepts to discuss as well. Before going into that with behavioral economics. We have rationality. Rationality is all about making choices for the most optimal level of payoff or utility. This means that individuals are self-centered and they only look at the payoff they can get from a certain decision and choose the optimal level. Rationality plays a key role in utility theory. Because utility theory looks at how much utility an individual can derive from buying a certain good or service, and the satisfaction he or she derives from it. Then, the individual will choose the option with the highest utility level, regardless of the utility levels that others may get from their decision. It only looks at themselves. Also, we look at game theory, which analyzes multi-person decision problems. And it consists of two or more independent persons with divergent interests. What does this mean? It means that the two players make decisions that affect the decision making of the other and also affect the payoffs of the other, while the decision maker is only considering their own payoff and the own utility they derive from it. One example for the game theory is the prisoner's dilemma example, which we will now look into further. Okay, so here we are with the prisoner's dilemma example. What is the prisoner's dilemma all about? It's about two suspects that are held in custody because they are being suspects of a crime that has been committed. They have two options when being interviewed by the police. They can either confess, which means for instance, suspect 1, that he tells that suspect 2 has committed the crime, or don't confess and do not say anything at all. What you can see here are the payoffs. As the numbers of the years they have to go to prison. So for instance, -5 means that suspect 1 has to go to prison for 5 years. And the second payoff represents the payoff for suspect 2, which here also means that suspect 2 has to go to prison for 5 years. And if we look at the best situation where they can end up with, it is both choosing don't confess. Because they only have to serve 4 years in total together, whereas in the other fields you see that in total they have to serve 10 years. However, if they are in this situation where they both choose don't confess, suspect 1 might feel like it's better to confess because if he confesses and suspect 2 chooses don't confess, they will end up here leaving a payoff of 0 for suspect 1, which means that suspect 1 does not have to go to prison at all. However, if suspect 2 already anticipated that suspect 1 is choosing to confess, then suspect 2's best reaction is also to choose confess, because then suspect 2 only has to serve 5 years instead of 10. This means that in the end of this game, they will always end up here, choosing confess for the both of them. And in this situation, neither one wants to deviate, because if they're in this situation, suspect 1 deviates to don't confess, he has to serve 10 years instead of 5. So they end up in a situation which is actually worse than it would be if they cooperated. So, now that we looked at the prisoner's dilemma in depth, we noticed that people chose for the option that gave them the most payoff or utility, without considering the options of the other. This means they ended up in a situation where they had a lower payoff together than they would have had in a situation where they cooperated. And this can be explained by classical economics, because classical economics considers agents to be always rational, and they solely base their decision making on maximizing payoff or utility. It's more of a narrow perspective on human interaction. Then, if they would have cooperated, we could have explained it by behavioral economics, because behavioral economics considers agents to have a bounded rationality, a bounded willpower, and a bounded self-interest. So agents do not act rational at all times. It includes more psychological, social, cognitive, and emotional factors. And it's a more broad perspective of human interaction. However, do note that behavioral economics does not dispense the theory of classical economics and rationality completely. It just mentioned that agents do not always act rational. Now, we can look at behavioral economics and the application to environmental issues. And one theory we can use is the tragedy of the commons. And the tragedy of the commons stands for problems that arise from excessive use of a shared resource. For instance, consider you have a field used by two herders who can put sheep on them. The herders cannot buy a field for their own because it might be too costly, or they do not have the property rights, so they have to share it. And it's therefore hard to exclude potential users. The use of the good is rigorous. For instance, if the other herder is putting too many sheep on the field, then the field will be deteriorated and cannot be used by the other herder again. So common pool resources are very sensitive to those inefficiencies. It's important to build trust, because building trust is of central importance to avoid the tragedy of the commons, because you can now trust the other herder to not put too many sheep on the field. So there are certain examples we can look at for a tragedy of the commons. For instance, the overfishing of the ocean, the depletion of oil and gas reservoirs, pollution by different agents, and also climate change. And we are going to look into climate change further. Okay, so now we're going to look at the situation of climate change. And first we have to answer the question, what is climate change? And we notice that the climate is changing due to the emission of CO2, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is emitted by various reasons, but we're going to focus on businesses who produce products and thereby emit a lot of CO2. And this emission of CO2, this harms the environment in a big way, which means that if the environment is worsened by this, everyone is affected. This can be due to rising sea levels, extreme weather, affects living and survival conditions of animals and humans. So everyone would be better off if climate change would be stopped and the problem would be solved. However, if you have to solve the problem yourselves, then you have to produce less, and this can actually increase the cost for you, because you cannot get as much profit as you would like. So therefore, people are actually reluctant to reduce the greenhouse gases because it's costly for the individual. So the rational choice theory actually suggests that no one does anything and they just wait for others to solve it because it's costly to do it yourself. We can now look at the application of this climate change in the prisoner's dilemma to show that this would also be the case. Okay, so now we're going to use the example of the prisoner's dilemma and apply it to climate change. Of course, again, assuming that people act rationally. So we have two firms who are producing goods, and they get a payoff, a positive payoff of producing a lot of goods, but also they get a negative payoff of harming the environment. So of course producing more leads to more CO2 emission, leads to a worsening of the environment. And you see here that they have two options, produce more or produce less. And again, the best option for them together would be to produce less. Well, because they then have a combined payoff of 300, which is higher than any of the combined payoffs in the other options. However, again, if we're here in this situation, then firm 1 might want to think, okay, I can produce more and get a higher payoff because the environment is somewhat saved by firm 2 because firm 2 is producing less. However, I can get a higher payoff because I'm producing more products and can sell more. But again, if firm 2 anticipates this, he will also choose produce more, because from this situation it would be better for firm 2 to choose produce more, because then he has a payoff of 100 rather than 50. So in the end they will end up in a situation where they will just produce more and do nothing about the environment, which of course is bad for the environment, because climate change is then only growing. Okay, so now that we've shown in the example that if people make decisions regarding climate change and they act rational, they end up in a situation where no one does anything. However, in the real world, this is not happening, because people and states do cooperate. For instance, the states have made an agreement called the Kyoto Agreement, in which it states that everyone has to reduce their CO2 emission in order to solve the problem. And then the question arises, why are the states doing this? Because if they would act rational, they would just go for their own and do not care about solving the problem. However, behavioral economics shows that everyone will be harmed the most by collective inaction, because the long-term harm is worse than the short-term benefit. And furthermore, behavioral economics assumes that people are not solely self-interest, but they also take the effective directions on others, and also future generations. So you can see that states might be interested in the future generations and how are they are going to be affected by the actions we do today for climate change. And behavioral economics also takes emotions into account, for instance the feeling of guilt. And a key aspect of this is social norms. Because if other states are all doing a lot of work to reduce the CO2 emission and you are doing nothing, you might feel guilty because you're not filling up the expectations of the other states. So you feel guilty because you do not live up to the social norms of the other states. So now the question arises, how can policymakers make use of behavioral economics to reach their goals? And we can show this by two subsets. So first, emotions. The feeling of guilt, as we just explained, can be used by messages from the countries that are affected most. So they can tell how climate change affects them and affected people in order to let them feel guilt and change their behavior accordingly. Furthermore, you can use social norms. So you can show a lot of messages which state like 70% of economic students choose environmental products. And this can actually mean that economic students will buy more environmental products because they feel like, 70% of my group is actually already doing it. I have to live up to their expectations and do it as well. However, do know that it's necessary that people have to identify with the social group that is presented. For instance, if students see a message that shows that 70% of the elderly people are doing something like this, they might not feel as inclined to do it because they do not feel that the group is representing themselves. So, we now come to the conclusion of our presentation. What we have done today, we have looked at several theories that explain rationality, and then we've looked at behavioral economics, who disregards that people act rational all the time. So, microeconomics can explain human decision making based on behavioral economics, utility theory, and game theory. And these theories can also be used to explain problems like the tragedy of the commons. So there's an application of the theories to environmental issues. Then, in the end, policymakers should acknowledge these theories and use them in their policies to increase effectiveness, either through emotions or social norms. So, if you have any questions left after this presentation, you can contact us at the following emails on the slides. I hope you've learned a lot through this presentation and you found it very interesting. And all that's left to say is have a nice day.